This is the big event. This is the big session. No pressure, guys, but this is the excitement, something we've been working on for so long to bring this level of transparency to the industry through our members. And you made this happen through helping us write the specs, for helping us write the testing rules, for helping us write the idea of how we build a software platform to bring full transparency to the MLS marketplace for data. Not just the MLS marketplace, property data across the industry. It's excitement for us. It's sort of a celebration for this community, for you having done the work, for having supported us to build what we've got today, and to continue to improve and iterate on it going forward. So I'll stop talking because let's bring up the people who can really talk about how we built this, what the next steps are. Josh Darnell, Dan Troup, come on up. Let's talk about RESO Analytics.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Let me get some glasses on here so I can actually see the screen.
Not on? There we go. Cool. I'm Dan Troup with Remax and G73, and Josh Darnell, everyone knows him, CTO of RESO. And we're talking about a new work group we're starting called the Certification Analytics, and really starting to talk about what a new certification looks like. You want to advance those?
Yep.
Does anybody remember the year Data Dictionary was required as part of the minimum standards for an MLS board? What year was that? 2016. It was a while ago. Do you remember when Web API was required? It's required. Is that so it is? Exactly. I believe it was July of 2016 was when Web API was required as well. So I put up this graphic because this is kind of my own oh shit moment. Sorry, am I allowed to swear on stage? Is that loud? Okay, sorry for the people streaming, the kids that are watching on the stream. In 2018, Remax had this audacious goal to take on our own data feeds, right? We were partnering with the Homes.com crew, which did a fantastic job for us. And we thought, look at all these data dictionary certifications. This is going to be kind of easy, right? We're going to be able to these fields are already mapped for us. We'll just start to apply these data pipelines. We got about 500 to get through. We know it's a big paperwork challenge. We know it's a big data lift challenge. And my oh shit moment was when we weren't receiving data dictionary feeds. We would ask for them, but they weren't really there. So there was really nothing we could do. We had to work it out, right? So over 1 million fields mapped later, and we spent about $3 million building a tool to map these fields, to map 500 MLSs. Our entry to the market was very, very expensive. Now the data dictionary is very real, and I'm not discounting what the data dictionary crew does. And I think Rob said yesterday on stage, do not use the data dictionary internally. Sorry, Rob, we use the data dictionary internally. We mapped all the MLS fields to the data dictionary standard, and we absolutely love it that you guys make the decision for what we should call these fields. And it also makes it simple for when we want to share our data with other people, knowing that we're using the data dictionary. Go ahead. With this analytics workgroup, we really want to make sure that the data consumer is our North Star. The people who are going to use this, let's really open up and take a look at what is included in these fields. And Josh and his team have done a fantastic job of bringing that to us. The data consumer, the people that are actually using it, are they getting access to it? And are they able to use it? And we'll talk a little bit about the different lenses we're going to look through here and something that the tool provides. The RESO standards lifecycle. This is very, very simplified, right? We create the standards, data dictionary, they reiterate those standards. We then implement those standards. By implementation, we have a path through policy to require that MLSs meet a certain standard. When new policy comes down that says you got to have this field or this version and you need to be certified on that, we have a path to require that. Like everyone got certified in 2016. That was fast. We were missing one key element, and that key element was validation. Did it actually happen? Did people actually implement the standard? So this is our life cycle. And today, Josh and his team have developed a way that we can actually validate that these standards are being used. So we have two visions for you today. We have a microscope and we have a telescope. And I propose that these are the two angles, right? A lot of us view just the microscope. We're working with one MLS, how well they've implemented that specific standard. But really, we don't have a telescope. I sit on a small committee with NAR that we get advice back from brokers. And they say, well, there's these new commission standards coming out. I think some of you might have been on this call with me. And it's like, well, how many people provide commission fields today? How many MLSs out there provide commission fields today? Nobody can answer those questions, right? And I'd call that the telescope, right? You're kind of turning that lens back around. We're looking at all MLSs across the board. Or in some of these data dictionary stuff, we're asking ourselves questions around how many square footage fields are there across the board, right? How many people have implemented different versions of square footage? How do we answer those questions? And that's more that telescope view. So how do we better direct? And when I go back, can you go back one slide for me, Josh? When we go back to create and reiterate, and we talk about what's needed in the data dictionary, don't we need to also know what we have already and what's been implemented and what's being used? And that's the validation part. And that's where we'll get into this difference between the microscope and the telescope. So I'm going to let Josh take over from here and show you what he's created, because it's some amazing stuff, and give you kind of a two different views here of what we're trying to do with this work group.
So thanks, Dan.
Yep.
So really the main difference now is that we use automated testing tools and we collect data when we're doing certification. And that's a huge step for us. We used to just check metadata. We didn't check data, and you kind of tell the result, right? I mean, so we fixed that. So this is more on the microscope view. What happens now is that providers get certified. They can spend as much time on refining and perfecting their systems as they want. And then these reports are shown to them. Then they're shown to their customers. And they can iterate to make their systems do what they say they're going to do. So this is a summary report. We'll get into this in a second. So, one of the key elements here is we have advertised, and that's what's in the metadata. And that's what we had before. But what's in the metadata is often not reality. First slide was, data dictionary isn't real. What's available in the payload is reality. And that's what people need for their products. So we can answer those questions now. We also have detail reports. These have data availability fill factors here for even ever enumeration at the enumeration level. And we can tell both for RESO enumerations and for local enumerations how much each item is actually being used. We also have a new element, performance. This was actually brought to us by data consumers. And we're basically finding what people have been saying, is that some of these servers are pretty slow. That's not necessarily a negative thing. A lot of the people who have servers that are maybe a little performance challenged, they don't know it themselves. And these tools have allowed them to do some analysis and collect some metrics. And we've had some providers, they've gone from 30 times slower than the industry average to 2 times as fast within a week, just from knowing this.
Shout out to MLS Grid here, though.
Yep.
They're not slow.
No, they're pretty fast.
You can see the averages, which are based upon previous tests, which Josh is aggregating there, but also how they compare to that specific industry average, which I think is important.
Yeah, let me show you that. So there's everything here has an industry average. Easier with my mouse, I think. So here's the industry average here on the left, and then here's what was found. And we have this for every single resource. In this case, there's I think 5, but you could see it for property or for media or for whatever they have on their servers. And then we have this response time. That's how long it took to fetch that page of data. In this case, it's usually 100 records. And then we have this estimate, this projection of how many seconds would it take, given that, to fetch 1,000 records. And this is about the number that we've heard from people out there as well, is that it takes about 12 seconds, 15 seconds to fetch 1,000 records. If you have to fetch 1 million records, you'd be waiting a long time. So, but what's reasonable, right? I mean, there's internet guidelines about how fast servers should be. Anything over a second is pretty much not good. But this group, this analytics group, is been set up to help define that, set metrics, get feedback from the community, ask data consumers, what would you expect at the worst case? And then now back to the telescope. from aggregating all this data, we have an industry-wide view, something we've never had before. Very unique data set. We have insight into every single market. And the tiles here, these are actually heat for each postal code. And these show, when there's heat there, it shows that there's more than one provider doing business in that market. That allows us to kind of connect those two providers together and tell them, can they interoperate or not? So Dan, maybe you want to talk about this one a little bit?
Yeah. So I think Josh has done a good job of promoting these in the work groups, and maybe many of you've heard him say Cat, Matt, and Pat. So these are the alignment tools for consumers. These are the people that are going to stare through the telescope, right? As a consumer of the data, such as ourselves at RE/MAX, what would it look like to go to 10 more markets, right? What would it take to implement? I remember back in the early days when we were implementing, we had to set categories of the fields around what it would support for our specific application. Obviously, we need bed, bath, square footage. What does that look like across these different markets? And if you're in a market and you're looking to overlap or do a data share, what does that look like? How aligned are your two data feeds? And then for providers, for MLSs, how compatible are we with this other MLS, right? Again, more around the data share side, but also looking from the market standpoint of where we would end up, pushing into different markets or going into different markets and overlapping.
And it's really common now that there is more than one provider in many markets. So if you have two vendors in your market, if they don't align, it's going to cause a lot of problems for you, a lot of work, a lot of cost, just for that part of it. But then the same thing for data shares. And we've developed these tools actually talking with all the people who are doing this. It wasn't just something that RESO did. We reached out to, I think, 30 consumers, 15 MLSs, and all the vendors and talked to them about this. And really, it's for consumers. The market and the provider alignment tools, those function to help the consumer, because if they're not aligned, the consumer is going to have big problems. And if they are aligned, there might be some data missing, but at least they'll be able to get kind of a consistent feed.
Another good consumer example is we want to build a pool search, right, in the US.
Yep.
Because pools are, I don't know, the next big thing or something in this pandemic. And it's how good would a pool search work across the board, right? And just try to say, as you're developing new products and bringing them to market, what does it look like?
And we're going to see a demo of that here in a second, actually. Because it's just, one thing to talk about it, but this is built. So at this point, we need to put a UI on it, and we can give you these tools. I guess that's my cue. Let's see here. Hopefully my internet is good. Just check. Okay. So I guess I'll start with some of the reports. Grid has been nice enough to allow us to demo their system here. So this is what it looks like for a provider. Let's move this garbage. So, here's all their accounts. Each one of these has one of those reports. We can pick any of them. I'll pick on Matthew's here. Matthew, I'm going to pick on Stellar. So, Stellar's doing pretty well here. What this report is we have fields and we have lookups. This shows what's been advertised, like we talked about. So that's what's in the metadata. They say they have 571 fields across all resources. When we sampled them, we pull up to 100,000 records per resource. So we have a good sample, and it's kind of randomized. And when we sampled them, we found data in 517 fields out of those 571. So that's pretty good. They basically advertise what they have on the server. So as I mentioned, this is across all resources. So we see everything that they had there. This is all data elements. So you might ask, well, what about RESO? There's their RESO fields. Still doing pretty well. 272 available. Industry average is 249. So they're above the industry average. Lookups are interesting because RESO doesn't really have standards for lookups right now. We started to roll them out in 1.7 and we need to do a little more work. So that's one of the major features of Data Dictionary 2.0 to address that. But it's also not just enough to know something was there once. So we have this above 0 saying here. That means it was there at least once. We can also see how many things were there 100% of the time. And that's a super important number because if you're trying to look at the industry average payload or industry payload, we know that there's 73 fields that are there 100% of the time. We should look at those, figure out if we can turn this into something.
When we were building RE/MAX.com, we had the data team and we had the front end team. And then it was always this chicken and egg thing where it was like, what features can we add to the site? And they'd be like, well, what data is available to us? And we'd be like, we don't know yet until you guys start downloading the data and we start to look at it. So this would kind of answer a lot of that of determining which fields to go after, right, when building a product.
It's like those precogs from a minority report. So let's look at their performance is here. Also, good, about 4 times the industry average. Nice work. We've got a detailed report. So if you wanted to figure out which of those fields were there 100% of the time, you just do this. And we can see in property, here's all the property fields that are there 100% of the time. Good thing that standard status was, that's nice. Good thing that there's no local fields in standard status. That'll fail in 2.0. But we can also see the fill rate for each of those statuses. We got 66,000 instances of close being there in the 100,000.
There's no 17 versions of pending in this one? Okay, that's good.
So let's see here. So, this is the microscope. And the telescope is here. So Dan mentioned something interesting. What if you have an innovative product and you want to know whether it'll work in the marketplace? We can actually search the data on the back end to figure that out and expose that for consumer tools that can do the same thing. So if you have a product that needs green features, for example, we can take a look at that. So let's see about green energy efficient. Now we have all the markets that have green features. And pretty cool here, kind of accidental, but Arizona is one. So if you're trying to build a product with green features, we can tell you every market that product's going to work in. We also have showing instructions here, just out of curiosity. And when I enable this, it's going to be markets that have both green features and showing instructions. So if we zoom out a little bit, we can see that.
How many of you rushed in the pandemic when we had to switch over to virtual showings, and how many MLSs provide this already, or different types of showings instructions? How great would it have been to have something to look at to say, okay, who's doing this already? How are they doing it? How can we implement it? And that's really being able to move fast on this kind of stuff and be able to pull this information up is going to be critical.
Yeah, we want to make it easy for people. Like, how do we make the standard work? Well, we tell you where people are using the standard, right? Pretty straightforward, but it's very hard to do. This took a lot of coding and sampling, and there's a lot of interesting stuff behind the scenes here. But eventually we'll put a UI on this so that, put in your fields that you need. We will tell you which markets that they'll work in.
That's cool.
So I think we'll go back to the presentation here. Actually, any questions so far?
I know this isn't Kibana,
yeah,
but this is what the analytics group work as a group is about. What do we pull forward, right? What do we pull forward to eventually put into the tool that you guys will want to see? We'll show you a little bit more about the work group and how you can join in on that.
Yeah, something I want to mention here too, just while we're on this slide. This concept of overlapping markets, and some people call it disorder. Maybe you'd even call it disorder.
Disorder? Yeah.
Yeah, but these tiles, the heat here is how many providers have data in a given market. So if I hover over one, there's four different providers that had data in that market. Who are they? Well, we know. We don't show them here. We don't call them out, but we can actually touch bases with them and see how they line up and run reports on them. The main problem with overlapping markets isn't the fact that there are many providers in one market. That's actually what we want. Hopefully they're all using standards. It's that right now they're not aligned. So that's what these tools help to do. Go back to the slides. Dan, maybe you want to do this one?
No, go ahead. It's all you.
So, this is something that's come up in the work groups. We're already using these tools now. Impact. What happens if we change a field? How many people are using it, right? In the past, we've kind of asked for a show of hands. Maybe some people are in the meeting. Maybe we don't even have those people in the room. Now we know if there's, going to be impact to deprecating a field or renaming something or repurposing something. Then adoption. How do we measure success? In the past, it's just been, were you certified or not? That certification wasn't very robust. How do we measure success now? And how do we measure adoption? Well, we can see which markets have which fields.
Yep.
Is there more? That's what this group is actually being set up to kind of discover. Then new standards, we can use all of these local data elements that we find and analyze them and take them back to the data dictionary. If we find 4 or 5 things that seem to be similar, maybe we don't have to ask for it to post it first. We just know already, and we can just surface that in the groups. So I think Rob Larson is very, very eager to have those reports. And Jason's not going to be very happy once he does. But so this is really key. Our process has completely changed to work off this objective feedback we're giving. And it starts really with the provider. So I'm not going to go through all the details here, but we have this kind of job engine and this kind of stuff. And they come into the system, they request their certification, some results, eventually materialize, and then they get to this point where they're going to email their customers. Now they can do whatever they want to help fix their system before they get to that point. If they want to spend 2 months on it, improve the performance, their availability, they would use the tools during that time to do so. And then once they're comfortable with the results, they send them off to the customer. Now it's the customer, the MLS customer. So now they're the ones who are responsible for making sure that their vendors are doing the right thing. They have the same reports. If the performance is low, they can say, well, vendor, I'm not going to accept your results right now. Go fix that. So it gives their customers an actionable way to do something about the problem. We've never had that before. So, and then once they're certified, it actually shows up publicly on the site, so all the consumers can see it. This system is built to scale. We want everybody in the industry to basically use this on the back end when they're doing a deployment. So we can run hundreds of tests at a time. It's all serverless. So there's no servers running. It's all on demand. So if you want to run 100, simulate like 100 clients coming in to your server when you do an important deployment, we could tell you if you broke something. And there's an API as well. Members and providers can automate all their processes through our API. They can pull data sets. They can do their own analysis if what we have isn't enough. And actually, everything we're doing is open source as well. So if they want to contribute that back, make a PR. This one is your slide, I think.
Yeah, this is mine. So the certification tool that Josh has built, which I think he's got more coming up on this too, being able to demo this. And what we're really focused on is that telescope side. What kind of analytics do we bring forward? What kind of questions do we answer for the industry? Our next meeting is going to be in June. We've only had one meeting already, and we definitely had a showing to that first one. Really trying to define our mission around what our future deliverables will look like back to the transport work group. So our next meeting is going to be in June. Look for that invite for those of you that want to come and give some feedback.
Yeah, we have a roundtable 11:35 today. I'll be going into this more. This group is really what we test reflects how we measure things, right? So we need to define how we're testing things. We need to make those tests be the things that consumers are doing so that reflect consumers' reality. That's super important. So we want consumers in this group to say, well, when I'm replicating, I use these kind of queries, that kind of thing, and this is what I expect. And then we can take that and formulate that into new tests, new ways to measure things that we can actually show if that's working or not. I think that's probably a wrap.
Yeah. Any questions? Yeah, right here. Great question. I'm waiting for that too. As a fellow data consumer, I think once the certification starts up. Oh, sorry, repeat the question. The question was from Compass, right? You're from Compass? Yeah. How do data consumers access this right now? Well, I think we're still in the testing, not in the testing phase. It's live for MLSs to go enter their information, their customers' information to have the certification done. Once the certification's done, it gets published, and then we can go view it as data consumers. But also, I think there's a bigger question here of, this is a really great tool that for those of us that participate in RESO and our members and pay dues, there should be some features here that we get from this tool, right? And I think that's being discussed internally as well. But once it gets published, everyone will be able to view it. It's public, it'll be public information that you can view.
And you can actually reach out to me as well, josh@reso.org. We actually have accounts for API access. So what we're looking to do is actually allow all the consumers
I
to
need
run
my
the
access first before you start handing out other people's.
No, we treat everybody equally here. But, yeah, so just reach out and we can get you some access for it. So,
other questions? Yeah. Yes, we are looking for a vice chair if you would like to volunteer.
Any other questions? Rick?
Yeah. So, yeah, Rick's question is, the server that's being tested versus the server that we're getting access to, right? And how those two potentially align. Is that, you have that right, Rick? I wish I could come high five you because I'm in that same exact boat that I feel like these are some magical servers that are being tested that no one can access. So I have asked and I've fought for to publicly display the URL that was tested under, or some kind of way to either put our credentials in there too and verify that it's the same across there. We use things like RetsMD and other things to validate credentials today. But, you know, how can we figure out, is this the server we're getting access to as well? I'm right in line with you on that. Yes.
And I think it would be great to have consumers.
We
run the
talked
tool.
about that, of allowing data consumers to enter their own credentials or keeping track of credentials in here as well. I think that's important.
Yeah.
All righty. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it. Yep.